a surprising number of people say, "Oh, you're so lucky. How'd you get this job?" And then they're right; it is a good job. But I also happen to be an American living in Australia. What happened was I met my Australian wife. We were both working for an Australian bank in New York, and she wanted to go back to Australia, and I didn't want to be a banker all my life. So I went to business school in Australia at the University of Melbourne with the intention of changing careers. And I really thought that I would start my own small business, or possibly find a family business where there was no family, and apprentice myself to the guy and eventually buy out the whole business. And so on graduation, I started to look around for these little businesses, and wasn't finding any. So went to Lonely Planet and said, "Do you remember me? I'm one of those kids that did a case study." In fact, I'd actually been in a group that used Lonely Planet for case studies in several subjects. So we knew Lonely Planet quite well from a strategy point of view, from a marketing point of view, from an organizational point of view, and so forth. And I remember pretty clearly Tony Wheeler had come to one of our presentations, and he said, "Oh, yeah, come on in, we'll have a talk." And I got there, and I don't think he recognized me, and he certainly didn't have a list of things that an MBA student can do. The only other person in the place who had an MBA was him, and he had gotten it 20 years ago, and he disguised pretty well the fact that he was an MBA-type person. But so we ended up having a conversation about things that were worrying him. They weren't crystallized into projects yet, but he was able to make a list of things that were of concern, and just agreed that I would go on the payroll for about 2 weeks and walk around and talk to people, and then come back and tell them what I was going to do. And the intention was that I would do a marketing plan or do some cash flow analysis or something. Well, it pretty quickly turned out that I couldn't do any of those projects because when I went to the finance area, there was just one bookkeeper fellow who wasn't capturing enough information to do any analysis in the first place. And when I went to talk to the guy that Tony said was in charge of the TV series, he said, "Oh, I didn't realize it was me that was in charge of the TV series. Why don't you try talking to somebody else?" And so the place had just kind of, again, outgrown its infrastructure. And so when I came back to Tony and started talking about what I would do, instead of saying, "Well, here, I'll do this project, it'll take me 4 weeks," started talking about, "Look, you really need to reorganize things, and here's a possible way to do it, and you probably ought to hire this type of person." And one thing led to another, and the 4 weeks that we talked about I was going to be there turned into 4 months, and after a while, in fact, after not very long, we were talking about a permanent position, and it worked out well for me because there was a fellow who had been with Lonely Planet for a long time, and he knew very well how to produce books, and he was also had done a lot of traveling, a lot more than I had, and so we became co-general managers together, and I brought to the business school training, and I was responsible for finance and marketing and human resources and things like that. And the other general manager was responsible for guidebook production. He was the publisher. And that arrangement existed for a while, and then gradually it became apparent that it would be more helpful to have one person in charge, and that Richard and I were actually spending a lot of time keeping in touch with each other, and it wasn't all that productive. So I was put in charge of Richard, and I was the sole general manager.